I've had a wonderful time here, and Sarah Goldfinger, who Ellie mentioned, is really extraordinary. I can see now why she succeeded, having spent her formative early adult years here. It's such a great environment for creativity, and she's one of the most creative people I know. And she was already very experienced in television when I got into television. I got into it very late in the game for me. I'm a late bloomer in this regard. So I thought I'd just start tonight by telling you a little bit about my story, how I got there. Unlike many of the young people I've been speaking with in the last couple of days, I did not have a burning desire at college age to write anything. I had a burning desire to act. I wanted to be an actor. And at 19, I moved to New York and studied acting. Loved it, did okay in New York, but did even better when I moved to Los Angeles about 5 years later. And had a lot of success in front of the camera for a starting out actor. I starred in a pilot, I did some commercials, some guest spots. But I really didn't like working in front of the camera. I missed the theater, I missed a live audience. I missed that interchange, I miss the medium. You know, the theater is a poetic medium, and film and television are literal media. They're very different. And I just wanted to work more in the theater. So living in Los Angeles, I knew I needed a job. You can't make a living as a theater actor in LA, or you can't make much of a living as a theater actor in LA. So I thought, wow, if I had a job like selling real estate, I'd have all the flexibility to go to auditions, go to rehearsals. I could work it around showing a house now and then. Well, what happened was I loved selling real estate. I was really good at it. I very quickly started, breaking into lifestyles of the rich and famous. I had a Cadillac. I had an American Express card. I went on vacations that I paid for, and people were interested in my opinion, which was new to me, because when you're an actor, nobody's interested in your opinion. I was very good at it and thrived at it and gave me a great life. And after about 7 years of it, I wasn't even thinking about this. I mean, I never stopped thinking about the theater, but I honestly was not thinking about writing. And I was holding an open house in Studio City, which is the south end of the San Fernando Valley. Big 5-bedroom, cold as ice, brand new, white, stark mansion. And it was raining. Nobody was going to come into this open house. It was a bad market. It was a bad day. It was a bad house. And I took the information sheet that said David Rambo presents 5-bedroom beauties south of the boulevard and turned it on the blank side and took the pen from the open house sign in here please book. And I started to write characters and setting and story ideas, and I filled up the page and took the next one and the next one. And by the time I got to the 50th page, because we always had 50 in on a Sunday, just in case, it was about an hour past when the open house was supposed to close. Nobody had come in, but I had started writing my first play. It was like a drug. I could not get enough of writing, and I took every opportunity after that, all the spare time that I thought I would be going to auditions and rehearsals, and I was writing a play. I worked at night, I worked on weekends, and I eventually rented a house up in the mountains in San Bernardino County to finish the play, and I did. I called in, it's unproducible, which is why you're never going to hear about this play. It needs 14 actors. So I called in 14 friends I knew to read it around my dining room table. One of them, by the way, was Mark Cherry, who went on to create Desperate Housewives. And we all were reading. And when it was over, Mark said to me, he said, "You have a voice." He was writing Golden Girls at the time. He said, "You have a voice. And playwriting is a craft, and I think you're the craftsman. You're the artist. You should do this. It's better than writing television." So I finished that play. I finished another one. And then I wrote a play called God's Man in Texas that Dan mentioned, and it went to the Humana Festival of Actors Theater of Louisville and was produced all over the country. From there, it was one of the 10 most produced plays for 2 years after its premiere here in the country. And actually, it's internationally produced because I had a Vancouver production. It was produced, among other places, at the Geffen Playhouse in Los Angeles. Fast forward to summer of 2003, CSI crime scene investigation, ended this prior season, its third on the air, as the #1 TV show in the country, and started its run, which it still holds 10 years later, as the #1 television show in the world. It's watched by more people than any other television show in the world. It's unbelievable and really gratifying. Billy Peterson, who played Gil Grissom, who we're going to see in a moment, he was a Chicago theater actor initially, and he had been talking with his TV writing staff for 3 years, and there were no playwrights there. In a way, he felt like he spoke a language that they didn't speak. He also spoke television, but he wanted to bring another voice, a theater voice, into the writer's room. He knew the media were different, he just wanted it there. So he called his friends at the Geffen Playhouse, who are all from Chicago. Who do you have as a playwright who wants to work in television? They gave him 3 names. The first 2 were Pulitzer winners who didn't want to drive the 30 miles to the studio where CSI filmed. I was the 3rd name, and I had a full tank of gas. I couldn't get up there fast enough. I didn't know what CSI was. I'd watched it once, actually, I should say. I watched it once. My friend was the doctor, played the doctor, who told Gil Grissom he was losing his hearing. So I went up there and I met with them. They had read my plays. They knew all about me. The producer from Jerry Bruckheimer's company came in to get to the meeting. At the time, I did not know that was in fact, not only did I not know it was a big deal, I parked in his spot. You do not park in an executive producer's spot in Hollywood unless it's your name on that curb. I learned that lesson right away. But we got along fine, and they took me to the set to meet Billy, to meet Marg Helgenberger, the other star who we're going to see in a minute. They took me went to the standing sets. I saw the crime lab, I saw autopsy, I saw the police department, the holding cells, the interrogation rooms. Little did I know I was walking through the next 7 years of my life. My first episode, as Dan mentioned, was a fan favorite, and they asked me to join the writing staff, and I stayed there for 7 amazing seasons. I brought a clip from CSI, so forgive me, but it's such a fun show, and I wanted to share this with you. This is a clip that I like a lot because I think it addresses some of what Billy wanted a playwright on the staff to bring to the show. It's a scene that CSI has written hundreds, believe me, hundreds of times, 2 investigators looking at evidence at a crime scene. But this time we not only learn a little about the crime, we learn a little bit about the investigators. And then that's followed by a quick montage from season 7, which was a remarkable season in this show. If you watch the show, it was the season that we had the miniature killer, and our season premiere was a 2-part episode that had John Mayer, Cirque du Soleil, and Danny Bonaducci all in it. In fact, the picture on the posters of Sarah and me with all the pages on the ground is the 2 of us taking the 3 stories that made up the season premiere. I'd written 1, Sarah had written 1, and our executive producer, Narain Shankar, had written 1. The only way to organize this enormous episode was to cut the scenes, cut up each script into the scenes, and start doing it on the floor. Sarah just had the most floor space of any of us, and that's how we did it. And at 2 in the morning when we finished, we broke out the champagne and somebody grabbed a camera. And it's led me to Hampshire today. So let's watch the CSI clip. Television was my family business on the hardware side. We had a Zenith dealership in a little town called Spring City, Pennsylvania, Rambo's TV service, and we sold and serviced televisions. When we started, they were all black and white televisions, and then they came color televisions, and just about the advent of flat screen, we got out of the television business. Everybody retired, and I was not interested in taking over that side of the business. I was already working on this one. When I was a kid and we had that business, there were 3 channels. Does anybody remember when there were only 3 channels? It was a golden time. We were just talking about this at dinner last night. Here's the advantage of only 3 channels. I know if you've grown up with 500 channels and the internet, it must seem like awfully limiting. But what was great about it was a common experience. You go to school the next day, and everybody talked about what they watched last night. And chances are a lot of your friends watched the show that you watched. And the country kind of moved, not with one mind, believe me, it was not that harmonious a time. But the country was very aware of everything, of all the other influences that everybody else in the country was being exposed to through television. You could keep up with it. I can't even keep up with TV today. I have a DVR that is, you know, overstuffed, and I will never, ever, ever get to dump it to watch everything I want to watch. But I don't know if that really means anything, but there was a fourth network, which we called educational television, that did have Julia Child, and usually a science guy of some kind, depending what market you lived in, if you were lucky, and occasionally interesting documentaries, and not much else. People didn't watch educational TV. We thought that was boring. And then around the early 1970s, something called Home Box Office started. And Home Box Office started in my home state. It was being tested in the mountains of Pennsylvania. Why they picked Scranton-Wilkes-Barre, I have no idea. But the first things they started to show were occasionally movies. The studios were very reluctant to let movies be shown on so-called pay television. And they also had fights. And it wasn't continuous programming. If, you know, you'd get a schedule when something would be on, and you turned it on and waited for the picture to appear. It sounds so primitive now, but it was ground-shaking then. What it proved was that people would pay for television, for certain kinds of television. And that kind of led to cable TV. And cable TV let certain people like Ted Turner out of Atlanta put their programming across the country. And the first station to go across the country was WTBS, Turner Broadcasting out of Atlanta. And by selling it to cable, selling that feed, Ted Turner got the capital he needed to create CNN, which is, you know, still the most watched, well, except with Fox now and then in some markets, still the most watched news source in the world internationally, and often in this country, which is pretty amazing. And that was really when television transformed. And it started to affect scripted programming too. When cable networks started to put scripted programming on, it opened up all kinds of opportunities for writers, for actors, for directors, for post-production. Some of the programming was bought, already made, some of it was made freshly, but putting scripted on TV was amazing. And then people found reality programming, but I don't talk a lot about reality programming. I don't really like it. So we have this wonderful new golden age now. We have fiber optic cables. We have over 200, 300, 400, 500 channels. I think my household has 188 channels, of which, do you have this where you start to scroll and there's nothing on that you want to watch? And then I go to the DVR and I think, oh, it's going to be an hour to watch that. And then I get distracted. So really, to be honest, I don't watch a lot of television, but I'm so glad millions of people do. This is what's interesting. We were just talking about this last night with Susan at dinner. In as little as maybe 15 years ago, the #1 TV show probably was getting about 50 million viewers a week. The #1 scripted TV show today is NCIS, and it gets less than half of 50 million viewers per week for a first-run episode. The audience is down by half, and that's for the #1 show. When you get down to the like 6 or 7 or 8 show scripted, it's 12 or 13 million viewers. The viewership for the top broadcast shows is way, way, way down. And so is what they're paying people to make them, because network television is an advertising medium. It's all about getting eyeballs to the tube, and the eyeballs they want are primarily women from 18 to 49. I actually had, when I worked on NYC22, we were on a conference call with CBS. I was in New York, they were in LA, and the guy from advertising sales was on the phone and he said, "Hey guys, hope you have a lot of fun doing what you do. We don't really care about what you do. To us, it's just the stuff that's on between the commercials." We did our best. But what changed? Why? Is it just because there were all these many channels? I don't think so. I think it goes to the reason that we watch TV to begin with. I think Homo sapiens are an empathetic species. We understand ourselves and our own lives by processing stories, listening to stories, telling stories, watching stories, participating in stories. And we don't need TV to do that for us anymore. We can do it on Facebook with Facebook friends, and we can be the star of our own show. We can have a narrative that goes on and never ends, and goes on multiple tangents, and is like one of these, you know, when the Greeks did their dramas and they were all-day festivals, Facebook's kind of like that. It's like a heroic story that never ends, and we are the star of our own story. Or we're participating in other people's stories, or we're voyeuristic and eavesdropping in stories. But we have a way of communicating with others that is not sitting in front of a television and choosing one of 3 or 183 channels. I think that's the biggest thing. The other thing, of course, is DVR, because the other thing Homo sapiens is a species that does not like commercials. So when we watch on DVR or get the DVD set, let me ask, who still gets DVDs to watch a series like all at once? Okay, good, I'm not alone. DVD production is down so much that the company that made most of the DVDs for the studios, Technicolor, demolished their Los Angeles building, their headquarters. It was at Universal Studios, and they demolished it because they weren't making enough DVDs. They were able to farm it out. And I know that because the CSI offices were in the building next to it, and we shared parking with Technicolor. And the 5 seasons I was at Universal Studios with CSI, we would see in the Technicolor spaces every year would be fewer and fewer and fewer and fewer. It was interesting to witness the change through, you can witness anything in LA through parking. And we could see a whole industry disappearing. So we watched them with our DVR, with the fast forward button. We watched TV series on DVD with no commercials. Who streams on the internet? Anybody watch on streaming? Oh, great, great. Does anybody stream without commercials on the internet? Where do you do it? Just tell me where. Shout it out. Netflix, yeah. Hulu. And Hulu. Hulu Plus? Or, yeah, Hulu. Yeah. What's that? And the pirate sites? Yeah, well, they exist. Every time you watch a pirated video, you are taking money out of the mouths of needy people in Hollywood. Just remember that. Here's some numbers. I didn't want to come in here without them. Only 64, this is according to Deloitte Consulting. I'm not like Fox News. I'll always tell you where the numbers are coming from. Deloitte Consulting just did a survey. Only 64% of US consumers ranked watching TV as one of their 3 favorite media activities. And only 3 years ago, just 3 years ago, it was 71%. That's down a lot. That percentage drops dramatically when they talk to consumers who are 14 to 23. That age group, it's down to 40% watching TV. Yeah. And now, the reason I think is that this is a television. Now this is a television. And this is a television. And this is a television. Which is very interesting for those of us who write and produce television. How do we create something that's as engaging on this as it is on that or on this? It's really a challenge. The networks think that we get a lot of network notes about not writing scenes where a lot is communicated without words. They like it when, we call it speaking the subtext, when the character says, I hate you so much, I have to kill you, instead of just coming in and killing them. Why? This is the research they have. This is really interesting. Over 80% of viewers are doing something else while they watch televised content. Now that's probably not a real new number. I know my mom used to knit or read a book while she was watching TV. But 80%, and what's really interesting now is they're often doing the other activities on the same screen. They'll have the Netflix window open, and they'll have the email window open, and they'll have the Facebook window open, and they'll have their another window for their browser open, and do it all at once. When we edit and screen episodes of our shows, we don't watch them that way. We watch them like in a room like this, with a big screen and with movie theater sound, and it's very exciting. I wish everyone would watch my show that way, because it's really great. But we know that consumers at home don't really do that. In fact, often at our final playback, when we listen to the sound mix, we listen to it first through these huge theater speakers, so we can hear every nuance and make sure there's no little burps or pops in there. And then we listen to it on what we call the smalls, the TV-sized speakers. like the average TV, nothing too extravagant. So we hear what the consumer hears at home, which is kind of interesting. What we have, what's really different now is we have the ability for anybody to be their own network. With one of these cameras or even one of these, you can make your own TV show. You can get your own channel. YouTube can give you the Jack channel or the Emma channel. You can be your own channel, your own network, your own brand. There are even people who go out and get sponsors and actually make a living by having their own channel. There are bloggers who have their own channel, and they get sponsors, and they get, you know, more followers to come. Again, it's all about eyeballs. If you get advertisers, anybody will watch you. We're even on Revolution creating content for this. We just did 5 webisodes for Revolution that told them. Did anybody watch any of the Revolution webisodes? NBC.com. Thank you very much. They're really good. Did you like them? Before I say they're really, yeah, they're amazing. They're very tight, short dramas that give a part of the story that we're not able to tell in the regular episodes for one reason or another. But just like to be aware of how we need to shoot it for this, we shot everything very wide and very tight. So it's wide to show the viewer where we are, and then it's very tight close-ups to go right in for the drama, which looks great on your phone or your iPad. It also looks great on your TV, but it works especially well for the device. So all of this is changing what we do and how we do it. But at the heart of it, we still want to do a really great show. We want to do something that people will come back to, whether it's on Netflix or on NBC Monday nights at 10 o'clock, 9 Central, and make sure that people come, get involved in our story, and keep coming back. Did anybody happen to watch Revolution Monday night? Oh, thank you. You're going to see a little of it again. I've brought from Revolution a little video that we're going to show this weekend at WonderCon in Anaheim. It shows actually some of the background mythology of our series, which you'll see. It's just gorgeous. I love to watch it. And then it will show the teaser, what we call the teaser, from Monday night's episode. So there's a little bit of black after that, and then you'll see it sort of picks up again. And you'll see the first few minutes of Monday night's episode. And then you are getting the first look at some clips from the rest of the season. And I had lunch with Dan today, and I didn't even tell him what he's going to see because it's so exciting. And I want you to be surprised too. So let's all watch some Revolution.